Essentially what split them apart was that Crixus was thinking short term and Spartacus, I feel, was thinking longer term.
It becomes clear that the two men and the factions they lead cannot stay together. Crixus abandons Spartacus.
We know that when Spartacus marches north in 72 BC, that Crixus and his men, perhaps as many as 30,000 men, don't come with him. They stay in the south. That's a significant loss.
It's a loss that weakens and divides the slave army at the very time that Rome launches its counter-strike. A new force of professional troops has been tasked with the slaves' destruction.
Whether the Romans knew that this split had happened, we don't know. It's entirely feasible. The Romans were an incredibly organized people after all, and they may well have timed that to perfection, knowing that with Spartacus's command split, that would make their life so much easier.
This is the inevitable response that Spartacus had feared. The Roman war machine in full battle formation. Two separate armies are dispatched from Rome. The first heads north to block Spartacus's path. The second hounds Crixus to the mountains on Italy's east coast. He may be a great warrior, but he is no general. His outnumbered force is no match for these new troops. They are easily crushed, and Crixus dies fighting. Then, both Roman forces set their sights on Spartacus. He is in the Apennine hills of central Italy.
Spartacus was grief-stricken over the death of Crixus, and he took the death of Crixus as a very personal affront.
Crixus may have deserted Spartacus, but Spartacus will avenge his death. His grief shows itself as rage.
This is one of the most astonishing moments in his story, because I think the Romans still expect him to run. They expect him to retreat before them, and he doesn't. He actually comes out fighting.
When Spartacus's men hit the first consular army, it is with such a force that the Romans turn and run. He brings his army round, attacks the second army, destroys that too. Only now does he concentrate on the business of getting away from Rome. Hacking a path, killing everyone, everything that stands in his way. He will go home. After weeks of fighting, hundreds of miles of marching, Spartacus brings his slave army, as many as 70,000 people, into the foothills of the Alps. They stand at the boundary of Rome's empire. They are almost out of reach. This is what Spartacus has been aiming for. The split from Crixus, the killing, the months of hardship, have all been about this moment. Spartacus will cross these mountains. He will leave Rome behind. He will return to Thrace, his homeland.
Spartacus achieves the extraordinary. And the only thing standing between him and freedom are the snow-covered Alps.
But even now, it could all be for nothing. One great army can still block his escape. His own army.
I think there may have been a moment when Spartacus is trying to persuade his people that freedom is just over those snow-capped mountains. And they refuse.
Having traveled the vast distance north, his men will not take this final step.
He couldn't take the army with him. They didn't want to go. At that point, it feels like he's failing.
Faced with the reality of crossing to the cold, primitive north, or staying, plundering rich Roman lands, they choose to stay. and they demand that Spartacus stays with them.
Spartacus, the leader, not just of a rabble, not just a killing machine, not just a general, but a man who really does care about his people. And they have expectations of him. And he feels duty-bound to stay with them, to continue in that role as their leader. He is not interested in more of the same. I think he's tired, I think he wants to go home, I think enough is enough. But I don't think his people see it that way.
And division spells disaster. When Crixus went his own way, he and his men were killed. The slaves must be united, and that means Spartacus must lead them. Since they will not give way, he must. He has never yielded to Rome's troops, but he now yields to his own.
At the point where Spartacus is persuaded to return back into Italy, I think there's an air of inevitability about his failure. He was going back into the lion's mouth, and I think there was an air of doom about what was about to happen.
They have thrown away the chance to escape and put themselves on a collision course with their former masters. There is only one direction in which Spartacus can lead his men. They must go south, and in the south lies Rome. The army he heads is depleted, but it is battle-hardened, confident of its own ability to win. He can use his troops simply to ravage the countryside, keep moving, plundering, killing, taking what they want and daring someone to stop them. Or perhaps they could go for the ultimate prize. Could they actually intend to bring down the Roman state? Spartacus's intentions remain hidden from Rome. But as news arrives that he is moving south, the world's greatest city is hit by a wave of fear. All its people know is that there is a force of slaves heading their way. Suddenly, its senators feel vulnerable. And Rome's richest man, Marcus Licinius Crassus, seizes an opportunity. He knows that for the man that saves Rome, there will be honor, power, and status.
Spartacus and Crassus couldn't be more different. Spartacus has a humanitarian streak that shines out through history at us, whereas Crassus was self-serving, an aristocrat, incredibly wealthy, and a bully.
Crassus is hailed by those who know him as the most intimidating, the most powerful man in Rome. And almost everything that is written about him testifies to, if not his charisma, then his menacing and intimidating allure.
Crassus is given command. He isn't a great military leader, but he does have gold.
Crassus is the organizer. He's the brains behind. He is not a front man.
He once declared that a man isn't truly wealthy unless he can buy his own army. And now he is true to his word. The Senate gives him 4 legions. He pays for another 6 out of his own pocket. A force of around 60,000 well-trained troops. They set out to attack Spartacus. But battle doesn't come immediately. Crassus's legions find themselves marching after an enemy that is constantly on the move.